The notification chimed across 17,000 worlds simultaneously, its crystalline tone cutting through the cosmic silence like a blade through silk. Commander Zephyr Kane of the Galactic Coalition nearly dropped her morning plasma brew when the message materialized before her eyes. "Impossible," she whispered, her violet irises dilating as she read the words that would change everything. The Apex trials had been closed for 3 centuries. But there it was, glowing with ancient authority. Emergency activation protocol engaged. One final contestant detected. Trial sequence resuming in 72 standard hours. Across the galaxy, similar reactions erupted like wildfire. On the crystalline spires of Antera Prime, High Chancellor Morpheus Vex slammed his 6-fingered fist against his obsidian desk, sending holographic documents scattering like startled butterflies. His crimson eyes blazed with fury that had been simmering for 300 years. "That cursed simulation," he snarled, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 defeated armies. "I thought we had buried it forever. The Apex trials." Even speaking the name sent shivers down the spines of hardened warriors across known space. It was the ultimate proving ground, a combat simulation so advanced, so brutally realistic, that victory meant godhood among the stars. Only one being had ever conquered it completely: Warlord Grimjaw the Destroyer, whose name was whispered in terror from the outer rim to the galactic core. 7 feet of pure nightmare, with obsidian scales that could deflect plasma cannons and claws that could rend starship hulls like paper. He had entered the trials 3 centuries ago as just another ambitious conqueror. He had emerged as the undisputed apex predator of the galaxy. Until now, no one had dared challenge his record. The simulation had remained sealed, a monument to his supremacy. But someone, somewhere, had qualified for entry, and that meant the impossible was about to become inevitable. On a small, unremarkable planet called Earth, in an equally unremarkable apartment building, Maya Chen was having the worst day of her 22-year-old life. Her job interview had been a disaster. Her boyfriend had broken up with her via text message, and her ancient gaming rig had finally given up the ghost with a pathetic wheeze and a puff of smoke. "Perfect," she muttered, pushing her black hair out her eyes as she stared at the dead monitor. Just perfect. She had been in the middle of her favorite virtual reality game, a combat simulator called Star Wars Unlimited, when everything went dark. Maya had been ranked #1 on Earth's leaderboards for 3 years running, but that hardly seemed to matter when her entire setup was now nothing more than expensive paperweights. As she reached for her phone to call tech support, something extraordinary happened. The air in front of her began to shimmer, reality bending like heat waves rising from summer asphalt. A holographic interface materialized, displaying symbols that hurt her eyes to look at directly. "Greetings, final contestant." The voice that emerged was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It simply was, carrying the weight of eons. "You have been selected for the Apex trials." Maya blinked several times, certain she was hallucinating. "Okay, either I'm having a breakdown or aliens are pranking me. Neither option is particularly appealing. Your performance in terrestrial combat simulations has been monitored. Success probability, negligible. Entertainment value, substantial. Do you accept?" "Wait, what?" Maya's voice rose an octave. "You've been watching me play video games? That's either creepy or impressive. I'm not sure which." The hologram pulsed with what might have been amusement. "The trials await. Failure means death. Success means ascension. Choose now." Maya looked around her tiny apartment, at her dead computer, at the rejection email still glowing on her phone screen, at the empty pizza boxes that had been her only companion for weeks. Then she looked back at the impossible thing floating in her living room and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine excitement. "You know what?" she said, a grin spreading across her face. "My life couldn't possibly get any worse. Sign me up." The world dissolved around her in a cascade of light and impossible geometry. When her vision cleared, Maya found herself standing in a vast arena that defied comprehension. The sky above churned with nebulae of every conceivable color, while the ground beneath her feet felt solid despite appearing to be made of crystallized starlight. "Welcome to your doom, little human." The voice came from directly behind her, dripping with malice and dark amusement. Maya spun around and found herself face to face with a creature that belonged in nightmares. Warlord Grimjaw towered over her, his obsidian scales gleaming like polished death, his eyes burning with the fires of 1,000 conquered worlds. "Let me guess," Maya said, tilting her head as she studied the massive alien. "You're the final boss, right? The big, scary monster everyone's supposed to be afraid of." Grimjaw's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass mixed with distant thunder. "I am the apex warlord, the destroyer of worlds, the—" Yeah, very impressive," Maya interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "Do you have a shorter name? Because I'm not calling you the destroyer of worlds every time I want to get your attention. It's exhausting." The massive alien blinked in confusion. In 3 centuries of ruling through fear and intimidation, no one had ever interrupted his introduction. You dare mock me?" "I'm not mocking you," Maya replied cheerfully. "I'm just saying your naming convention could use some work. Maybe something snappier? Grim works. Or J. I like J. Silence." Grimjaw roared, the sound echoing across the impossible arena. "Do you have any idea who I am? What have I done?" Maya shrugged. "Not really, but I'm guessing it involves a lot of yelling and probably some unfortunate wardrobe choices. Seriously, who told you that the obsidian scale look was intimidating? It's very evil overlord circa 3,000 years ago. If Grimjaw had possessed blood vessels, they would have been bulging spectacularly. I have conquered 17 star systems. I have crushed armies beneath my claws. I am the undisputed master of combat simulations." Maya finished, raising an eyebrow. "Because that's what this is, right? A fancy video game." The warlord's mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to speak. "This is the Apex Trials, the ultimate test of combat prowess. The ultimate video game," Maya corrected again. "Look, Jay, I appreciate the whole dramatic presentation thing, but I've been gaming since I was 5 years old. I know a boss fight when I see one." Grimjaw stared at her for a long moment, his burning eyes trying to process this unprecedented response to his presence. Finally, he threw back his massive head and laughed, the sound echoing across the cosmic arena. "Fascinating," he rumbled, his voice taking on a different quality. 3 centuries of challengers, and they all approach me with fear, with respect, with desperate courage. But you see this as entertainment." "Well, yeah," Maya said, looking around at the spectacular surroundings. "This is honestly the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. I mean, look at this place. It's like someone took every awesome sci-fi movie ever made and turned it into an interactive experience. And you're not afraid?" Maya considered the question seriously. "Should I be? I mean, you said failure means death, but this is some kind of advanced simulation. The worst thing that happens is I respawn somewhere, right?" Grimjaw's expression shifted, becoming something that might have been respect mixed with pity. "Child, this is no ordinary simulation. The deaths here are real. The pain is real. The consequences are permanent." For the first time since arriving, Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "Oh, that's pretty serious then." "Indeed. So I ask you again, are you afraid?" Maya took a deep breath, looking up at the towering alien who had been the terror of the galaxy for 3 centuries. Then she smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. "You know what, Jay? I'm terrified, but I'm also more excited than I've ever been in my entire life. So, what do you say we get this party started?" Grimjaw studied her for another long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well, human. But know this, I have never been defeated. I have never even been seriously challenged. You are walking into a battle you cannot possibly win. That's what makes it fun," Maya replied, cracking her knuckles. "Besides, someone has to be the first, right?" The arena around them began to shift and change, transforming into a hellscape of jagged rocks and rivers of molten lava. Weapons materialized in the air around them. Energy swords, plasma rifles, gravity hammers, and devices Maya couldn't even begin to identify. "Choose your weapons," Grimjaw commanded, his voice echoing across the transformed battlefield. Choose wisely, for they will be your only companions in the moments before your death. Maya walked among the floating weapons, examining each one with the casual interest of someone browsing a menu. The other spectators, thousands of beings from across the galaxy who had gathered to witness this unprecedented event, watched in fascination as a small human girl completely ignored the most powerful weapons in favor of something tucked away in a corner. Interesting choice, Grimjaw observed as Maya selected what appeared to be a simple metal staff. That is the basic training weapon. It has no energy enhancement, no molecular sharpening, no quantum targeting systems. I know, Maya said, giving the staff a few experimental twirls. But it's familiar, and sometimes familiar is better than fancy. Your funeral, the Warlord replied, selecting a massive energy blade that hummed with barely contained power. Are you ready to begin? Maya settled into a fighting stance that looked deceptively casual, the staff held loosely in her hands. Her eyes, which had been filled with humor and sarcasm just moments before, suddenly became cold and calculating. I've been ready my whole life, she said quietly. Bring it on, Jay. The battle that followed would be remembered across the galaxy for millennia to come, not for its duration, which was surprisingly brief, but for its outcome, which was impossible. But that tale, dear listeners, must wait for another time, because the greatest upsets in history are never rushed, and the most legendary victories demand their proper telling. The real show is just about to begin. The arena fell silent except for the distant rumble of artificial thunder. 50,000 beings from across the galaxy held their collective breath as a human girl and the Apex Warlord faced each other across the Hell's Cape battlefield. Betting pools that had formed in the seconds before combat began heavily favored Grimjaw. The odds were 10,000 to 1 against the human. Maya Chen stood perfectly still, her simple metal staff gleaming dully in the crimson light of the simulated lava flows. Her posture looked almost bored, as if she were waiting for a delayed subway train rather than facing the most feared warrior in known space. Last chance to surrender, Grimjaw rumbled, his massive energy blade casting dancing shadows across his obsidian scales. I promise to make your death quick. That's very considerate of you, Jay, Maya replied, not moving from her casual stance. But I think I'll pass. I'm curious to see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. I am the unstoppable force in this scenario, the Warlord clarified, apparently missing the irony. Are you, though? Maya asked, tilting her head with genuine curiosity. Because from where I'm standing, you look pretty stoppable. Bigger doesn't always mean better, you know? Grimjaw's roar of fury shook the arena as he launched himself forward, his massive form moving with impossible speed and grace. The energy blade screamed through the air, leaving a trail of ionized particles as it swept toward Maya's neck in an arc that should have ended the fight before it truly began. Maya moved. It wasn't the desperate dodge of a panicked amateur or the calculated evasion of a trained warrior. It was something else entirely. She flowed like water around a deadly strike, her body moving with an economy of motion that made the attack seem clumsy and telegraphed. The staff in her hands blurred upward in a movement, so fast that even the advanced recording system struggled to track it. It connected with Grimjaw's wrist at precisely the right angle, at precisely the right moment, with precisely the right amount of force. The energy blade went spinning away across the arena, its humming suddenly silenced as it clattered against distant rocks. Impossible! Grimjaw breathed, staring at his empty hand. No one has ever disarmed me. Huh, Maya said, examining her staff as if seeing it for the first time. Would you look at that? It worked exactly like I thought it would. How? The Warlord demanded, his burning eyes fixed on the small human who had just accomplished the impossible. How did you know where to strike? Maya shrugged, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Pattern recognition. You telegraph your attacks about 3 seconds before you make them. Plus, you favor your right side when you're angry, which creates an opening at exactly 17 degrees from vertical. Basic combat analysis. Basic combat analysis, Grimjaw repeated slowly. You speak as if disarming the apex warlord is a simple matter of observation, isn't it? Maya asked, genuinely curious. I mean, you're strong and fast, and probably very experienced, but you fight like someone who's never faced real opposition. You've gotten lazy, Jay. Complacent. The massive alien's laugh held no humor this time. Lazy? Child, I have perfected 17 different combat forms. I have mastered weapons from across the galaxy. You have won every fight for 300 years, Maya interrupted, which means you've stopped learning, stopped adapting, stopped growing. She began to circle him slowly, her staff held in a guard position that looked deceptively casual. When was the last time someone surprised you in combat? When was the last time you had to think about your next move instead of just relying on brute force and intimidation? Grimjaw's scales rippled with barely contained rage. You dare lecture me on combat? I'm not lecturing, Maya said, her voice taking on a harder edge. I'm explaining why you're about to lose. The warlord's second attack came without warning, his massive claws extending as he lunged forward in a move that had torn through starship hulls. Maya was ready for it. She dropped low, the staff spinning in her hands as she swept Grimjaw's legs out from under him. The massive alien crashed to the ground with an impact that shook the entire arena. Before he could recover, Maya was moving again, the staff whistling through the air to strike pressure points along his spine with surgical precision. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but enough to send waves of paralysis through his nervous system. How? Grimjaw gasped, struggling to rise as his body refused to obey his commands. How do you know Kethvar nerve strikes? That technique is forbidden to all but the warrior monks of Zentera Prime. Maya finished. Yeah, I know. I studied their fighting style for about 6 months when I was working through the Stellar Conquest campaign. Great game, by the way. Excellent AI programming for the combat systems. You learn forbidden martial arts from a game? Grimjaw's voice rose to a near shriek. Well, technically, I learned them from watching recordings of actual Zenran monks that were used as reference material for the game's animation system. Maya corrected. But yes, essentially. The arena erupted in chaos as 50,000 spectators tried to process what they were witnessing. The apex warlord, terror of the galaxy, unstoppable force of destruction, was being systematically dismantled by a human girl who had learned his weaknesses from video games. This isn't possible, Grimjaw snarled, finally managing to regain his feet. Simulations cannot teach real combat skills. Maybe not the ones you're familiar with, Maya admitted, settling back into her deceptively casual stance. But Earth's gaming industry has gotten pretty sophisticated over the past few decades. Full sensory immersion, real-time physics modeling, adaptive AI that learns from your fighting patterns. She paused, her expression becoming thoughtful. Plus, I've been playing these games for 18 years. 12 hours a day minimum. That's roughly 78,000 hours of combat experience across every fighting style, weapon system, and tactical scenario you can imagine. Simulated experience, Grimjaw protested, though his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. Is there a difference? Maya asked. My brain doesn't distinguish between swinging a staff in a game and swinging one in real life. The muscle memory is the same. The pattern recognition is the same. The tactical analysis is the same. She gestured around the transformed arena. And this is just another simulation. A good one, but still a simulation. Which means I'm not fighting the legendary Apex Warlord. I'm fighting a very sophisticated AI program that's running its behavioral patterns. Grimjaw's eyes widened in understanding and horror. You're treating this like a game. Because it is a game, Maya said simply. The most advanced, most immersive, most beautifully designed game I've ever encountered. And I never lose at games, Jay. Never. The Warlord's final attack was a thing of terrible beauty, combining all 17 of his master combat forms into a flowing sequence of strikes that should have been impossible to counter. It was a culmination of 3 centuries of experience, the perfect expression of his martial prowess. Maya watched it coming with the calm attention of someone analyzing a chess problem. She saw the opening in the 3rd sequence, the slight overextension in the 7th strike, the moment of vulnerability that lasted exactly 0.2 of a second between the 14th and 15th attacks. She waited. The massive alien swept through his deadly dance, each movement flowing to the next with lethal precision. Maya dodged and weaved between the strikes, never quite where Grimjaw expected her to be, always one step ahead of the devastating attacks. And then, in that tiny window of opportunity, she struck. The staff moved with impossible speed and precision, threading between Grimjaw's defenses like a needle through silk. It connected with a nerve cluster at the base of his skull, a pressure point so precise that only the most skilled warrior healers knew of its existence. Grimjaw froze mid-strike, his massive form suddenly as still as a statue. "Gotcha," Maya said softly. The silence that followed was absolute. 50,000 beings from across the galaxy stared in stunned disbelief as the human girl stepped back from the paralyzed form of the apex warlord. "That's impossible," someone whispered from the crowd. "The warlord cannot be defeated." Another voice protested. "She must have cheated." A third observer insisted. Maya looked up at the massive viewing screens that surrounded the arena, her face calm and slightly amused. "Sorry to disappoint everyone, but there's no cheat code for this. Just pattern recognition, tactical analysis, and about 18 years of practice." She turned back to Grimjaw, whose eyes were the only part of him still capable of movement. "You're probably wondering how long the paralysis will last. About 30 seconds, give or take, which means you have a choice to make." "What choice?" the warlord managed to whisper. "You can get up and try again," Maya said, settling the staff across her shoulders. "In which case, I'll put you down again, probably more permanently this time. Or you can admit that maybe, just maybe, there are people in this galaxy who can surprise you." "And if I choose the latter?" Maya's smile was warm and genuine for the first time since the fight began. "Then maybe we can be friends instead of enemies. I mean, you seem like a decent guy under all the dramatic posturing. Plus, I bet you know some amazing stories about your conquests. I love a good war story." Grimjaw stared at her for a long moment as sensation slowly returned to his massive frame. When he finally spoke, his voice held a quality that no one had heard in 3 centuries. Uncertainty. "You truly are not afraid of me." "Should I be?" Maya asked. "You're skilled and experienced, but you're also stuck in patterns that are 300 years old. In the gaming world, we call that being predictable. Predictable opponents are just puzzles waiting to be solved. And you have solved me?" "Completely," Maya said without hesitation. "Your attack patterns, your defensive reflexes, your psychological tells. I could beat you 9 times out of 10 now that I understand how you fight." 9 times out of 10? Maya grinned. "Hey, I'm good, but I'm not perfect. Everyone gets lucky sometimes." Grimjaw slowly rose to his feet, testing his restored mobility. The arena held its breath as the massive alien looked down at the small human who had accomplished the impossible. Then, to the shock of everyone present, the apex warlord began to laugh. 50,000 beings came to watch my latest victory," he said, gesturing to the stunned crowd. "Instead, they witnessed the end of an era. Does this mean you're retiring?" Maya asked hopefully. "Perhaps," Grimjaw replied. "Or perhaps it means I finally have something interesting to do again. Tell me, human, would you be willing to teach an old warrior some new tricks?" Maya's grin widened. "Are you asking me to be your gaming coach?" "I suppose I am." "Well, Jay," she said, extending her hand in the ancient human gesture of friendship, "I thought you'd never ask." As the apex warlord shook hands with a human who had defeated him with nothing but a metal staff and 18 years of video game experience, the galaxy began to understand that everything had changed. The age of conquest through brute force was ending. The age of human ingenuity was just beginning. And somewhere in the vast network of the simulation, an ancient AI that had been dormant for millennia began to smile. The trials had found their true purpose at last. Not to crown the strongest warrior, but to discover the most creative mind. The future was going to be very interesting indeed.